Well, hello and welcome to Alpha Team Training, session number 1.
Hello, and thank you for making time to learn more about serving on Alpha.
I love that you're taking time to do these training sessions. I'm praying that this encourages you and it fuels that passion that God's been growing in your heart to impact the world around you with His love.
My name is Shayla, and for so many of my closest friends, Alpha has been a life-changing part of their relationship with God, and I'm thrilled that you've decided to be part of it too.
And I'm Jason, and I'm stoked I get to spend this time with you, going through some basics of Alpha and answering some of those questions that you might be asking.
Some of you might even be wondering, what is Alpha, or what does Alpha look like, and how can I be involved? These next few minutes are dedicated to answering all of those questions.
Oh, hey. Hi, just wanted to pause it there. I want to introduce myself. Sorry to interrupt, Jay and Shay. We're good friends. They'll be all right with it. My name is Ben, and I'm here for you. I wanted to come out and just pause it for a moment and give you some top tips on how to make this Alpha training session as amazing as it can be. So here's my best top tips. You ready? Number 1, stay hydrated. Drink lots of water. It's so important. It'll help you feel better.
Hey West Coast, thanks so much for being here. This guy's got some great advice here, like seriously. Drink water, that is such good advice. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. Whether it's a water bottle like this, or one of these babies, drinking water is gonna help you out for serving the Lord and seeing people come to know Jesus. Thanks for being here, West Coast. Glad you're here to join us on this team. We're here to see people come to know Jesus. It's gonna be awesome, it's gonna be fun. And listen to these guys, they've got great advice. So here we go. Thanks.
Number 2, do some cross-lateral movements, okay? It gets the oxygen flowing, gets the brain working even better. That means doing something like taking your right hand and bringing it down to your left knee, okay? I mean, in a moment, when you have a moment, just work it. And number 3, lean in. Even if you've done this training before, lean in and engage with the content. I learn something new every time I go through Alpha training. Before I go, I also want to warn you that I might come out from time to time. We'll press pause on things and I'll throw it to you guys to maybe answer a question or get some more information about your Alpha. Okay, I'll see you soon.
At its heart, Alpha is an idea. Imagine creating a space where people in your community, your friends, neighbors, and coworkers can come and have conversations about life, faith, and God in a way that is authentic and safe, where leaders don't need to have all the answers and anyone can share honestly about what they believe without the fear of being corrected or judged. That's what Alpha is all about.
One of my best friends today is a guy called Jared. And we actually met in high school. We spent a ton of time together because we're both on the school tennis team. And I don't know if you could tell now, but back in the day, I was quite the athlete. Anyways, that's besides the point. Here's what I'm getting at. There was a few moments while we're playing tennis that conversations about God and faith and life would come up. And after a while, I invited him to come out to Alpha, and we loved it. There were so many good conversations, and we learned so much together. That was almost 15 years ago, and I still remember the conversations we had today. In those years while I was in high school, I discovered that most of my friends had questions and thoughts about faith in God, but they didn't really know where they could go to discuss it. Alpha creates a non-threatening place where our friends can hear the message of Jesus in a compelling way and then explore their questions through discussion. Some of my best friends have a real relationship with God today because they were invited into a setting like Alpha.
Alpha started years ago in a church in London called Holy Trinity Brompton. When Nicky Gumbel, one of the pastors from the church, took over leadership for it, he began to champion Alpha as a simple way to engage people who might not typically go to church. Many lives were transformed and guests began to invite their friends to Alpha. And as it grew within Holy Trinity Brompton, news began to spread, and soon churches all over the world were hosting Alpha courses to engage in faith conversations with friends, neighbors, co-workers, and family members.
So far, 29 million people have experienced Alpha in over 100 languages. You can find Alpha in schools or coffee shops, in church buildings, in prisons, and in homes in more than 169 countries around the world.
But no matter where you go, the model is the same. Over 8 to 12 weeks, guests gather every week to have a meal together, listen to a talk on the Christian faith, and discuss it in small groups.
It's hard to imagine now, but the very first alpha groups that started popping up all over the world would sit together after having a meal and listen to the alpha talks on cassette tape.
Jason's not even old enough to know what a cassette tape is.
No, I learned about cassette tapes in history class when I was in high school. The little plastic things. And since then, we've moved on from cassettes to VHS, to DVD, and today you can find 4 great different alpha series all online. And each one is designed to uniquely engage different demographics. But even though the packaging has changed, the message and the heart remains the same.
Whatever part you play on your alpha team, whether a small group host or helper, a part of the setup team, or cooking in the kitchen, you are all vital to the success of alpha. Lives are going to be changed in your community as you invite others to join the conversation that is happening all over the world.
Yeah, each one of you play a significant role in creating this environment where people are going to feel welcomed and safe to be themselves as they hear the message of Jesus and experience the love of God. Alpha runs anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, depending on which Alpha resource you use. For example, if you're using the Alpha Youth Film Series, you'll find that's a few sessions shorter than the others, like the Alpha Film Series or Alpha with Nikki Gumbel.
An important part of running Alpha is the Alpha Weekend. It shows up just after the halfway mark on Alpha and covers a quarter of the content. In some contexts, this is done in one day, but it's best done over a weekend as a chance for groups to go away together and get out of the day-to-day flow of life. The Alpha Weekend is a time where relationships are deepened and lives are really impacted by specific opportunities for prayer.
Every Alpha session includes 3 things: food, a talk, and discussion.
Alpha always begins with food. Food is the ultimate icebreaker and one of the best ways for us to show hospitality. Almost all of the socializing we do revolves around eating and drinking together. It's the most natural place to build friendships and to create a space that is welcoming to everyone.
So, whether you're doing a big 3-course meal or something super simple like donuts and coffee, food is the best way to make an Alpha session comfortable because it makes it easy for people to relax and get to know each other.
Over the years of doing Alpha, I've realized how many people keep coming back just for the food.
It's amazing. So after you have some food, it's time for the next 2 elements, the talk and discussion.
Each session has short teaching that explores a question about the basics of the Christian faith. This will either be one of the Alpha videos or a live speaker. After the talk, everyone heads into small groups for a time of discussion. If you're using the Alpha Youth Film Series, there are moments for discussion during the talk as well as afterwards.
Now, the talks give a clear Christian perspective on the session topic, and the discussion is the time for guests to share what they think and believe about it. In the small group discussion, the focus is on creating space for the guests to share their thoughts and ideas freely. It's not a time to reiterate the whole talk or answer all the questions that come up. It's a time where we do a lot of listening so guests can talk about what they just heard. Now, this might feel a bit different from the other Bible study or small groups you've been part of before.
The small group time is the real heart of Alpha. It's where friendships are built and guests get to really wrestle with the message of Christianity.
So every session is meant to include food, a talk, and discussion. And these work best when we do it in a fun and welcoming environment. There are, however, 2 bonus elements we want to tell you about. They don't necessarily happen in every session, but throughout Alpha, there are specific moments for people to experience prayer and worship through music. For times of worship music, it's worth noting that not every group does this, and it doesn't have to happen every week. But it's a really important part of the Alpha Weekend, so we encourage you, plan to have this part of your experience.
Prayer is a big part of Alpha, and it's introduced to guests in a very intentional way. Early on, some of the talks end with a short word of prayer. After the 5th session, which is on the topic of prayer, many groups will introduce it into their small group as a way of closing the time of discussion. Later, at the Alpha Weekend, we also provide an opportunity for guests to receive prayer.
Now, just so you know, we'll unpack more about prayer on Alpha in the next 2 training sessions.
Okay, time out. I think this is a good spot to pause. Hey guys, I hope you're doing really well. You guys staying hydrated? Feeling limber? Got the oxygen flowing? I hope so. I thought this would be a great moment for our first discussion break, and I'm going to throw it to you guys to talk about the details of your Alpha. Maybe the point person can jump up and talk about the who, when, where, and what of your alpha. These are important questions. So I'm gonna throw a screen up right now. Did it come up? Just throwing it up. Do you see it? If you still see my face, it's just a technical malfunction. Give me a moment. Screen. Just pause it right there and talk about the details of your alpha. Pause. I'm gonna assume it's paused. Just gonna.
When I first did Alpha with my friend Jared, we loved it, but I had no idea how many other people were doing it around the world. Over the years, I've discovered that Alpha works in all kinds of contexts, from churches in Canada, to schools in Kenya, to prisons in England. And I think the reason why it works is less about the talks themselves, but because of the values that Alpha is built on.
Alpha is about being real, relational, reliant on the Holy Spirit, and reproducible by empowering others. These values shape how and why we do everything on Alpha, and will set you and your guests up to have the best experience.
As we talk about these values, let's start by looking at what the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. And so it was with me, brothers and sisters, when I came to you. I did not come with eloquence or human wisdom as I proclaimed to you the testimony about God, for I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I came to you in weakness with great fear and trembling. My message and my preaching were not with wise or persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power.
St. Paul says he did not come to them with eloquence or human wisdom. He says that he resolved to know nothing while he was with them, except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. This is a great place to start talking about our first value on Alpha, which is to be real. It's about simply being ourselves and presenting the timeless message of Jesus.
The number one concern we hear from Alpha volunteers is that they're worried they'll be asked a question and not have the right answer or know what to say. And the good news is that's totally okay. In fact, we do not want you answering every question. The best thing a small group host or helper could say to respond to a question they don't know is, I don't know. What does anyone else think?
The reality is that being fake or acting like you know all of the answers only pushes people away, but authenticity and humility draws people in.
Alpha is not about tricking people into believing or using fancy sales tactics. We simply be ourselves, be real about the ups and downs in our lives, and build friendships with the people that come. It's often as people see Jesus working in the lives of ordinary Christians, brokenness and all, that they understand what it means to have a real relationship with Jesus.
When we talk about the value of being real, it's a reminder that we can be real ourselves and that we present the authentic message of Jesus. Jesus is real, and only the real Jesus can change lives. And I think that's what St. Paul was getting at when he said, "For I resolved to know nothing while I was with you, except Jesus Christ and Him crucified."
And this leads us into our second value. Alpha is relational. Last fall, my friends and I did an Alpha together. I was hosting a group of about 8 people, and during one session, we started sharing some of the highs and lows from the week before. So as my friend Sam was sharing, she started by sharing some of the low points of the week. But when she came to the highlights, she paused for a bit and then said this. She said, well, Alpha is the highlight of my week. It's actually the highlight of every week. Now, as their small group host, I was a bit surprised to hear this. You know, to be honest, I'd been feeling like some of the discussion time wasn't connecting and maybe people weren't enjoying it. But she was loving it. She looked forward to going to Alpha every week. And after that, a bunch of other people jumped in and agreed. And the main reason they loved coming was because we got to see each other. And all this reminds me that people come on Alpha for all sorts of reasons, but people stay for the friendships.
In a time when people are lonely and relationships can be challenging to find and maintain, Alpha is an incredible place to find friendship, love, and community. Most people who come on Alpha say one thing they love most is the relationships they develop. And the gospel is all about relationships. When St. Paul was writing the letter to the Thessalonians, he said, We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Paul cared so much about the people he was teaching and preaching to that he often ended his letters with a list of people to say hello to. Paul wasn't simply showing up in town for one night on a preaching tour. He was sharing life with these people and modeling the Christian faith through the change in his own life.
Yeah, because Alpha is a dialogue, not a monologue. And it's a dialogue that grows and builds over a number of weeks. As friendships grow and trust is established, people become more honest and open. Every once in a while, someone asks why we made Alpha as long as it is. Couldn't the whole thing just be shorter? And I see where they're coming from. The whole thing is a big commitment for leaders and for guests. But the goal of Alpha isn't just information transfer. It's about relationship. And you can't fast forward relationships. Some of the best moments on Alpha can only happen after friendships have been built.
The third value on Alpha is to be reliant on the Holy Spirit. Being real is good, being relational is crucial. But let's be honest, the whole thing works because of the Holy Spirit.
Remember what Paul said to the church in Corinth? My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power.
Our job is to make the space and share honestly and openly. And then we trust that the Holy Spirit is at work in the lives of everyone who comes on Alpha. Whether they come every week and love the whole experience, or they come for 10 minutes and then leave again, we trust that God will work in people's lives in His own way and in His own time.
And everything we do on Alpha is shaped by this conviction. This is why we confidently and authentically present the message. It's why we can have such open conversation, and it's why we create moments for prayer.
And it's also why the Alpha Weekend is such an important part of Alpha. It's the space where the most time is given to prayer and conversation about the Holy Spirit. Over the years of doing Alpha, we have seen that it's on the weekend away that lives are the most impacted.
And where you and I might feel unqualified or inadequate, we rely on the Holy Spirit to give us the wisdom and strength we need. When it comes to evangelization and all of the Christian life for that matter, it's only possible because of the work of the Holy Spirit. And this is why so many groups organize a prayer team to pray throughout Alpha for the guests and for the leaders. It's a response to our dependence on God, and prayer paves the way for the work He's doing.
A man named Albert was placed in my small group. He was a bit grumpy, quite demanding at times, and he even fell asleep during the talk. By the fourth week, I couldn't even believe he was coming back, and I wondered why he was there. So I decided to ask him what brought him back, and he shared that he had been divorced twice, and most nights of the week he ate alone. Not only that, he hardly ever ate a home-cooked meal. He went on to tell me that it wasn't just the food that was great, it was the people. They loved him just as he was, even if he fell asleep and could get a bit grumpy. Week to week, Albert came back because of the experience on Alpha. On the Alpha Weekend, Albert had a pivotal moment in his spiritual journey and has gone on to be involved in my church, even serving in the kitchen for Alpha. I look back on that story to remind myself how God changes people, even when on the outside, it looks like nothing is happening.
The last value is that Alpha is reproducible. This is all about empowering others.
When you experience the love of God, the natural response is to want to share it with others. But we've all experienced how intimidating that can be. Alpha is a way that anyone can be part of seeing others meet Jesus. It's about helping ordinary people like you and me to share our faith.
It's often those who've just finished Alpha that make the best small group hosts and helpers on the next Alpha. When God impacts their lives, they want to invite their friends and family to experience the same thing.
It's a model for people at any level of their leadership or spiritual journey to engage. Not everyone can or even wants to get up and deliver a sermon, but almost anyone can facilitate a conversation like the ones we have on Alpha.
And there's lots of ways you might be involved. Some of you will serve in groups as hosts or helpers, and some might volunteer in other ways, like greeting guests or preparing food.
That's how I came to be involved with Alpha. It was a tool for me and my friends that we used to reach our colleagues at work. I had a desire to share my faith, and Alpha became a natural way of doing it. We ran Alpha in lawyers' boardrooms, financial firms, and homes. The reason I work for Alpha today is because it gives me a chance to empower others to do the same.
Hey guys, Jay, Shay, you guys doing all right? Sorry to pause you like that. This is a great moment to recap the 4 values we've been talking about. Being real, being relational, being reliant on the Holy Spirit, and being reproducible as we empower others. Now, I want to pause it here, give you a chance to talk about which value stands out to you. I mean, for me personally, it's being real, because how can I be anything but real? You know what I'm saying? Okay, that wasn't totally real. I wouldn't usually say no, I'm saying. So maybe let me put it this way. For me, it's being real, because it's so important to be yourself. So talk about right now what value stands out to you the most, and how are you going to build these values into your Alpha experience? Go!
So that's it for session 1. We've got 2 other training sessions to help you with small groups and praying for guests.
Serving on Alpha is one of the most challenging and most rewarding things I've ever done. I find it so disappointing when someone doesn't come back, or on the nights when the conversation feels flat. But every time I serve on Alpha, I'm blown away as I get to see God change lives up close. I fall more and more in love with God as I see the way His Holy Spirit patiently impacts lives with His love. And that's what we want for you and your group.
We love you guys. We'll see you in session 2.
Bye-bye.
Love you too, West Coast. See you next time, February 15th for our next training session.